reducing power prices by $275 for cheaper electricity. It will save families $275 on average a year. Households will benefit by $275 on average. It will mean cheaper power for homes and businesses. That will reduce power prices by $275. $275. $275. $275. $275. $275. $275.
Anthony Albanese continues to swindle us on energy. Let's get into it. A few videos ago, I attacked Anthony Albanese for lying to us on energy. Albo keeps telling us that Labor has delivered cheaper energy prices, but the evidence says the opposite. As I noted last time, power prices have exploded under Anthony Albanese. Under Labor, gas and electricity prices have soared, adding to inflation, cost of living, and sending more manufacturers broke. East Coast gas prices are at least 4 times what Americans pay, and Americans are the biggest gas exporters in the world. National electricity market energy prices have more than doubled under Albo's watch, from $75 per megawatt hour pre-Albo to nearly $200 per megawatt hour currently. As a result, Australians have been left paying some of the highest energy prices in the world, despite the fact that we are one of the world's biggest energy exporters. East Coast Australia exports over 70% of its gas, mostly to China, Japan, and Korea. Because we don't have domestic reservation on the East Coast, and we are the only gas exporting jurisdiction in the world not to have it, we pay some of the highest prices in the world, and we've managed to generate a domestic gas shortage. It is pure policy failure writ large. To add further insult to injury, both China and Japan are re-exporting Australian gas, while Australians on the East Coast are suffering shortages. The above chart shows that Japan sells more liquefied national gas overseas than it imports from Australia. So while East Coast Australians suffer from domestic gas shortages and globally high prices, the nations that we export to are reselling our gas for profit. That includes China and Japan. This is all because we have no East Coast domestic gas reservation policy, unlike our cousins in Western Australia. Last month, the Greens called for a domestic gas reservation scheme on the East Coast. However, Resources Minister Madeleine King rejected the Greens' proposal, claiming that intervening in the gas market would raise Australia's sovereign risk and trash Australia's international reputation. Madeleine King said that the Greens' demands would, quote, turn the lights off in countries that depend on Australia's gas for their energy security. Basically, what Mad King said is that she's more concerned about the welfare of Chinese and Japanese residents than Australians. Remember, both China and Japan are receiving more of our gas than they need and are re-exporting it for profit. Meanwhile, East Coast Australians are experiencing gas shortages and have been bled dry by exorbitant energy costs. Madeleine King's comments are especially laughable given that she's previously praised Western Australia's gas reservation policy. But wait, it gets so much worse. Former Independent Senator for South Australia Rex Patrick penned an article at michaelwest.com.au, link below. And what it showed is that the Albanese government has deliberately suppressed the release of a gas reservation options paper completed in November 2021 under the former coalition government. The former coalition government was examining options for gas reservation when the pandemic hit. Rex Patrick tried to have this options paper released to the public. First, he launched an FOI request, which was rejected. Then he spent $1,200 of his own money to take the issue to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Ultimately, Labor's high-paid lawyers won the day. Labor blocked the public release because it could offend our Asian gas exporters. As shown in the highlighted text on the right, the AAT concluded that, quote, whilst Australia has a strong relationship with Japan, Korea and Singapore, their reliance on energy from Australia provides the contextual setting for potential damage arising from disclosure of information relating to gas reservation in Australia because of the very real economic impact that Australia's domestic policies could have on those countries. So in short, Labor cares more about its reputation in Japan, in Korea, in Singapore, in China, than it does about providing its own citizens with cheap and affordable gas and electricity. While Rex Patrick is a patriot, Labor are traitors who care more about the residents of Asia than their own constituents in Australia. Thanks for watching. As you can tell, I'm pretty fired up about this issue. How can an Australian government care more about the welfare of residents in Asia than residents of their own country? They are elected to represent us. They should be providing Australians with cheap and affordable gas and electricity before worrying about the interests of those in other countries. The situation is even more absurd when you consider that both China and Japan are receiving more of our gas than they need and are reselling their gas for profit. Meanwhile, Australian residents on the East Coast are being bled dry by foreign-owned corporations. We are suffering domestic shortages and we are paying some of the highest gas and electricity prices in the world. This is adding to our cost of living, it is adding to our inflation, and it is sending our manufacturing industry broke. The bottom line is that this Labor government is a pack of traitors. They'd rather spend our money to give out subsidies to paper over the problem that they have created than fix Australia's energy crisis at its source.